Do you want to write that piece, or are you going to improvise it?
No, I need to write it. No. Maybe you guys need to be in the back with like cue cards. Like blank out.
We should actually have.
Anne, are you going to memorize all this? Like what?
You have cards?
Just have a computer. Okay.
Just have cards or paper. Paper.
And it turns out these debts we're drowning in somebody else's dollars. I don't know. It turns out that these debts are someone else's dollars.
Someone else's profit. Should we take this?
Yeah, we move that out. And we say, turns out our debts are someone else's profit. Our debts are someone else's profit.
And then I can maybe just period so we self-organized. We need to say 5 cents.
But the next line here that we have is we started asking each other how we can help each other.
Yeah, but I think that's captured by being determined to not just, we broke the silence. We realized we're in the red, we're suffering, and we're fed up. We're done. We're done, hiding. We're done, yeah?
We're done.
We're done. We're over it. So, what are we going to do about it?
How we were suffering what we had in common?
I don't like what we have in common. We started talking about what we were going through, how we were suffering. Not only were we all broke, or maybe that's too
wordy.
We started talking about our common experiences.
What we could do here is that to transition better in, we could take that line where it ends there, squarely in the red, and then say, that's what this red square means. It came out of a fight over free education.
And we started talking to each other.
Right.
We just started having a conversation. We broke silence. Somebody wrote how much debt they had. Winter told us he had $100,000. He ain't paying. Whatever.
Okay, write it down.
Over a year ago, Wall Street was flooded with people like us, angry over inequality and fed up with living in a society that exploits the majority for the benefit of a few. Last summer we got together in the park. Already I hate that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that even though we were evicted from Wall Street, we continued the conversation. We continued to talk to each other. Period.
We continued the conversation.
That's it. No, just continue to talk to each other.
Over a year ago, Wall Street was flooded with people like us, angry over growing inequality and fed up with living in a society that exploits the majority for the benefit of a few.
And
then we were evicted. But I think also being emphasizing exactly the environment in which this project came about, which was conversations, self-organizing. How is it that a bunch of people who were angry about this society came together and are making such a splash that now we're invited onto your stage to have a conversation with you? We self-organized.
I love that.
So rather than
you were the scruffy people in the park.
Yeah. Who are these
I showered to come
And they
here.
got together, and now we're buying up $1.2 million of people's debt. That's insane.
Yeah.
We need to highlight that, and that came through changing the nature in which we communicate to each other, the terms in which we came together, and that's exactly what we're asking medical professionals to do with their patients, is to change the nature of how they interact.
And the way that they think about healthcare.
Exactly. So I think less of an emphasis on what we did. We just focus on bringing awareness to debt by this huge grandiose act of buying up huge amounts and.
So maybe you should do an introduction like this,
that
and then
sounds
you should tell
great,
some stories, and then Anne can go in for the kill.
I was gonna say in the midst of the chaos, or what seemed to be chaos, what looked to you like a bunch of topless hippies.
The chaos of our lives.
I like just in the midst of oh yeah, I guess it's a little weird.
I was just thinking in the midst of what looked like chaos, actually conversations were had.
Yeah, that's good. In the midst of what looked like chaos.
Because I think it's important to acknowledge people think that it was nuts.
Yeah.
In the midst of what looked like chaos, we realized our collective power. When we got evicted, we moved to another park. And that's where I'm gonna leave it.
It's great, it's great.
When we got evicted, we moved to another park. And the conversations became more focused. Strike debt and the Rolling Jubilee emerged from conversations
In parks.
in Washington Square Park.
Yeah.
Like really grounded.
In conversations, yeah.
Just go directly to, you heard a few of those stories on the stage today, and then go to the rest.
Right.
To actually point to and answer what the red square is in the first place. So maybe it could be one of the two of you saying, you know, this red square came about at this point in time, this is the symbol, this is what it means squarely in the red, we've appropriated it, you know, and now we're doing this project. And the project is a framework to tie these different aspects together. And I think that that will then connect to what Winter's saying.
Right.
Because right now it seems a bit too focused on medical, like it's not showing our entire project.
Are there ways of opening the lines of communication between healthcare providers and patients that change the conversation about medical debt and to let people know that in fact the system has failed them? In addition to changing the way we talk to each other, we need universal healthcare in America. According to PNHP, a single-payer system that provides care for all would actually cost far less than the for-profit system we have now. In Strike Debt, we believe that single-payer is an important but short-term solution to our national healthcare crisis. It does not get at the root of the problem of an economic system that puts most of us in debt for basic needs in the first place. That's why we believe that the only real solution to our national healthcare crisis is a bottom-up grassroots movement to put people before profits. We hope you'll join us in the fight. The time is now. It's up to us. It's life or death. First, let me tell you a little more about Strike Debt's Rolling Jubilee initiative. The first thing to know is that debt is bought and sold for pennies on the dollar on a shady secondary market full of debt buyers and collectors. If you have $100 in debt, for example, and you go into default, the lender can sell your debt for a fraction of its original value, giving themselves a sweet tax write-off. And then debt collectors try to collect the full amount from you, the debtor. Strike Debt's Rolling Jubilee Fund purchases this debt on the secondary market. But instead of collecting on it like a debt collector would, we just abolish it. When we first announced the Rolling Jubilee campaign back in November, we were flooded with emails from people in debt. Many were asking for help that we can't provide, since all debt is sold in anonymous bundles. But many others just wanted to share their stories. While it isn't surprising that we got so many letters, after all, 3/4 of Americans are in some kind of debt, we did not expect so many people to write to us about medical debt. We received letter after letter from debtors whose lives had been ruined by one grim diagnosis. We heard from people who had lost their homes or who had to empty their retirement accounts to take care of a sick family member. In fact, Strike Debt got so many letters about medical debt that we decided to focus our first major debt purchase on medical debt and to build a campaign around it. Recently, we purchased a $1 million portfolio for about $21,000. We abolished the medical debt of over 1,000 people. And we sent letters to every debtor letting them know that their debt has been abolished and they no longer have to pay. We also started doing research on medical debt, uncovering some facts that many of you no doubt already know. 50 million Americans have no insurance, and 77 million have trouble paying medical bills. That number has grown exponentially in recent years. Today, an astonishing 62% of personal bankruptcies are linked to medical debt. And most of those people had private insurance at the time they got sick.
Sickness can destroy you in America. Both my partner and I had full-time jobs when I got sick. Though we had insurance, we didn't have family leave. When you're on chemotherapy 6 days a week, there's no way you can keep your job. Then, 2 years later, my partner got sick. Even though we had health care, a bad situation became a crisis. When our savings ran out, there was no safety net for us. Who has an emergency fund that'll last you 9 months? We began living on credit cards. I think a lot of people have assumptions about how people get into credit card debt. For us, it was how we survived during our most difficult time in our lives. The fact is that insurance doesn't cover everything, and you can't work if you're sick. Even people with health care are affected by medical costs. We'll be paying off our credit card debt into retirement.
We just purchased and abolished over $1 million of medical debt! Woo! No, I can't hear you! Thank you!
It was really surprising to see the level of shame and guilt that's associated with personal debt. I think the ideology behind it is really strong. You know, the fact that if you have debt, it's like it's your own fault and you somehow failed and you're like an irresponsible individual. And I think that's why it's so successful at isolating people from one another, you know, because people don't want to talk about it. You know, they don't want to share their stories, and that's why the debt assemblies we had were really powerful.
As soon as we went from our own debt and like personal debt we all have, we wanted to make an argument that it was a similar logic and a similar structure that was putting us into debt for housing and healthcare and groceries and whatever, education. There was the same logic that was behind the austerity measures in Europe and was behind the structural adjustment programs all across the global south. And so I think it was really important for us to say, like, this is the same weapon, or it's the same form that financial institutions are using this to, like, exploit and extract from, like, everyone all across the world. It's really personal, and it's something that we all struggle with, so that makes it, like, a really powerful thing to organize around. But it also, like, points to, like, solidarity across the world.
My parents are from Haiti. There's a lot of IMF interference and intervention in that country. And to just like grow up in this environment where I was always taught, like, you don't buy anything unless if you have the money for it right away. Like, you have to hold it. It's kind of like this personal like aspiration to be like debt free and all this stuff. But to see like how impossible that is in our society, and then to link that up with, well, look, that's what they're doing to like these countries in Africa and to like Haiti and to Jamaica and to like everywhere.
It's really a means of control because it forces you in a certain lifestyle, and it's also a way that this kind of society reproduces itself. Because, for example, you know, I have a lot of friends who, you know, I'd be talking to and they'd be like, oh, you know, I'd love to go traveling or something, but I can't. I have these loans I have to pay. Or, oh, you know, I actually don't want a 9-to-5 job. You know, I'd be so much happier like freelancing, and I could do that if I didn't have all these debt to pay. So it just like forces you in this very narrow path that is very beneficial to the system, and it, you know, it closes all of your other options.
Every school charges like $30,000 a year. They just go up, and they make it so easy to take out those loans. They're just like, oh yeah, here, just sign here, and like whatever, no problem. And then you go through your 4 years, and at the end you're like, oh great, I have like $80,000 of debt. So the point is, like, when somebody goes from point A to point Z, I feel like they have to be a certain type of person to attack, to like, you know, intellectually attack the foundations of the whole thing, and to say, well, this school never should have cost this much money. They don't even understand the historical like aspect of like where we're at, where it's like the schools never costed that much money like 25 years ago, 30 years ago, 40, 50 years ago. This is a new phenomenon. Those are the reasons why like people really aren't understanding that we're getting screwed, and they're getting screwed, and they should just not pay.